And welcome to the Athletic NBA Show. It's Friday. I'm Dave DeFore, and that means it's Nerder. She wrote, joining me as they do each and every week, Mo Dakhil and Seth Part. Now, I'm flying through this intro, guys, for a reason, because so much stuff is happening. We're in the midst of the playoffs. We got the second round starting this weekend. We got the first round potentially going to game sevens. We're going to have crazy game sixes tonight, Friday night. We're recording this Friday morning. And we got to jump right in, guys. We have too much to get through. The first thing I want to talk about are these good teams playing with their food. You know, when I was growing up, I was told not to play with my food because it would get cold. And in basketball, when you play with your food, your team gets cold. And a couple teams got caught so far in this playoffs, guys.
It doesn't just get cold. Your food fights back. And it's like, well, you know, at some point it's like you mess around too much and it's like, wait, am I the food? And but I think the overall point is, you got to be able to advance through 4 rounds of the playoffs. You got to be able to handle prosperity well. When the team is there to be beaten, you got to beat them. Whether it's you put yourself in danger of weird stuff happening, you put yourself at risk of an injury when you have to play an extra game. You just got to get it done.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about them, but there's several examples of just playing with your food across the board, and really the concept of it is just like you're putting yourself at risk every time you do it. As everything that Seth said, and it might be just a game, it might be just it could be as big as just the whole series in that opportunity and those things, and things can shift very quickly in the playoffs, as we've learned. You know, somebody takes a reckless charge and there are injuries and all sorts of type of stuff there. Playing with your food is always bad. When you have an opportunity, it's a killer instinct argument too. When you have the opportunity to kill them, you kill them. One of my favorite scenes, it's a stupid scene from the movie Die Hard. It's really a throwaway scene. But when the Italian guy is shooting at John McClane going through the table, and shout out to Bruce Willis, is, you know, crawling under through the table, he starts reloading and he says something to McClane going like, hey, when you have a chance to kill somebody, don't hesitate. And McClane goes like, huh, good point. And then starts shooting him through the table.
Thanks for the advice.
Well, it's the villain from the Bond movie laying out the entire evil plot instead of just, you know,
that's exposition. That's exposition.
I understand, but I mean, you know, it's just, yeah. I get it. And well, what it does though, man, when you're a top seed, and let's say, for instance, the Boston Celtics, there's now 2 more games of film from this playoffs for the Sixers to look at. That, I mean, you're giving up stuff. There's more opportunity for injury. These extra games, they add up. I mean, Robert Williams is already a guy who has struggled this season, I think, to find his top form. You don't want him having to play extra games.
I mean, just think about it from a rest perspective. They gave Joel Embiid more time to rest. And that's an important factor, right? Like, this series should be starting Saturday because, you know, at the latest at this point, if they had won this in 5, but now they're giving Embiid more time to rest and get going here. I think the other side of it too is you're missing opportunities to rest. Like, I look at the Lakers, and I beat the drum when they lost game 2. I'm beating the drum here when they've lost game 5. Like, I felt like they played with their food. I felt like, in particular, LeBron was I don't mind if this goes to 6, but like with the Warriors and Kings series going 6, possibly 7, that could have been extra rest days for them, and the other team would have been weakened there. So it's playing with your food, folks. I don't advise it, whether it's your actual food or an NBA game.
And there's an interesting thing going on here. Like, it's the kind of thing that you mentioned, you know, you lose a game in a playoffs that's magnified. You lose a game that's every game can potentially end your season in one shape or form. The interesting thing is it's something that just kind of happens occasionally over the course of the regular season, but doesn't as much in the playoffs. There's a thing, it's a thing that exists in multiple sports, but it's measurable in basketball, called the rubber band effect, which is basically like in the NBA, generally speaking, when a team is up between 10 and 16 or something like that, they generally play worse. Like, there's a very strong effect that sort of brings until it gets to be just this massive blowout. that the trailing team kind of sneaks back into the game. Now that's in the regular season. It's almost completely absent over a large sample size from the playoffs. So when a team like Boston, like Milwaukee, does it over and over again, it stands out in a playoff setting because teams in general in the playoffs are like, okay, well, we would normally try to limit our star guys' minutes to 33 tonight because we're having an easy game. Nah, fuck it. We're playing them 41 minutes a night. I don't want neutral. I want dead if we're going to stay with diehard folks.
Well, I mean, I guess that kind of leads right into our first big topic, and that is the Milwaukee Bucks.
I mean, they're the captain of playing with your food.
Yeah.
Team.
They were the overall number 1 seed. They were a lot of people's choice for the title winners this year. And I will say, not because of some overwhelming confidence. It was more, they've been consistent. We expected them to continue to be consistent. I thought at least a conference finals berth. We know how they match up with the Celtics, who were the presumed second best team. You lay it all out there. By the time they get to the finals, they probably have a size advantage and definitely Giannis advantage. So we all thought this was going to be title number 2 for Giannis, and it just didn't work out that way.
So I think we do have to lead by giving Miami tremendous amount of credit. It's like, it's
100%.
really
Jimmy Butler is amazing.
There's 3 things that had to happen for the Heat to win the series, and 2 of them the Heat are responsible for. Their role players shot the shit out of the ball. Gabe Vincent, who I've been very critical on times of, or continuously, essentially, made a bunch of shots. Jimmy Butler had one of the all-time first-round playoff series. But those 2 among themselves, the Bucks still win. If that's all that happens and the Bucks play at their normal level, the Bucks still win the series in 6 or 7. To lose the series in 5, even with Giannis missing 2 games, one of which the Bucks won, the Bucks had to contribute mightily, and they did so.
Well, blowing that game 4, right? Blowing that game 4, essentially, Mo, like you mentioned, they played with their food. They blew a big lead, and blow the game.
Yeah, I mean,
blow the series.
There's nothing else to really say like that. I'm gonna kind of put Seth out there a little bit on this one. His some of the stuff he said, when we were doing playbacks, and watch us on playback .tv. Seth was saying, hey man, as we were watching that game, even if the Heat win this, I'm not going to believe the Bucks are going to lose this series. That was before the comeback. And then after the comeback, Seth kind of was just like, oh yeah, this it's over in that sense. And it was because the way they lost in that sense, because that was a game they had locked up in the last 5 minutes. And that's a game the Bucks normally close, right? We've never really seen them struggle to close. Maybe I'm wrong and I've missed stuff this season, but we've never seen them struggle to close. That game, bad shots across the board from themselves offensively. I think just defensively got completely cooked, got completely out hustled. There's a play in the One Mo Thing video of Caleb Martin going basically from sideline to sideline to get an offensive rebound, and then he hit a massive shot, ridiculous shot over Giannis that had no business going in, but it did. I think you gave them life in that sense. And then when they won that game, honestly, for them and for the Heat, it probably just felt like, man, we could beat them no matter what. We can overcome any deficit against them. And that showed in game 5. I mean, they were down big in game 5 and did the same thing. So there's some real interesting stuff with what they've done and how they kind of pulled things off. And it was pretty fascinating with that. But if the Bucks close out, if Bucks win game 4 and close out and that series is tied 2-2, series is over. The Bucks are winning it. And I think that's just kind of the thing where they didn't take it serious enough.
How many times over the course of that game did one or the other of us say, hey, the Bucks should be up more? I know Miami's making some shots, but the Bucks should be up more. And at one point, I think early in the 4th quarter, now correct me if I'm wrong, I was like, hey, they're in control of this game, but what happens if Miami goes on a quick 7-0 run? And then immediately Miami went on the 7-0 run, and you just saw that everything tighten up, and it went from there. And that, like, for a team who, as you said, like their calling card was sort of professionalism. And I think we've described it as they're just kind of out there washing clothes, just getting stuff done on a workday basis. For a team that was their calling card, to see that just not be there anymore that's the part that after game 4, I was just like, hey, this thing that I based sort of my confidence on this team on, I don't think it's there anymore. And they're in trouble. And they
Well,
will.
and the worst part was that all of the glaring holes just had a giant spotlight shown right on them. I mean, the lack of athleticism, that comeback, you know, they kind of got bullied a little bit by just Miami saying, we're going to play harder than you. Harder, not just like more effort, but harder in that we're going to hit you harder and we're going to do stuff faster. And that, I mean, those games without Giannis, it was so apparent. He's the only athlete that they've got that can play basketball. You know, they have other guys, but they're not basketball players. And even in the games where he came back, where he looked a little bit diminished, especially late in that game 4, the first game back with the back issue, during that comeback, you know, he threw a pass and kind of got a little gimpy.
Kind of cramp.
Yeah.
Cramp.
And
on the lob to
Lopez.
Yeah, he did the old man. My legs hurt if I bend too far. Walk, little shuffle thing, and I got a little nervous that he wouldn't even be able to finish that game. So, you know, the lack of athleticism to me, I think if we're starting to look ahead, you know, hey, what sort of changes does this team need to make? They need some athletes, because right now they can only really play one way.
They need athletes. They need the Achilles heel for the team for years has been they're a volume, not an accuracy 3-point shooting team. They need more ball handling. Like they need more people who can create. You know, the systematized style of play means everyone is comfortable doing their thing in their role, but you play against a team that for whatever reason takes you out of that, and all of a sudden you have the ball ending up in a guy's hand. You're starting 2 guards' hands at the end of the penultimate game of your season, gets the ball in an advantage situation and doesn't know what to do and doesn't get a shot up, and you lose. Now you're going to lose, like down 2 ball last second, you're losing 75% of the time anyway. But to not even get a shot up with 10 seconds left, because
that's unbelievable. That's unforgivable with your season on the line. And they passed up looks. I thought Middleton had a look. I even thought Grayson Allen had a look. That's a painful way to end your season. And when you're supposed to win the championship and things like that, that's a brutal way to go out.
That play was infuriating. I mean, number one, to not get any shot up, but number 2, that it was Grayson Allen with the season on the line with the ball in his hands. I mean, the ball is going to find the wrong guy. I mean, you know, that's always going to happen. But like you mentioned, I don't understand, how does Middleton not take the shot that he had? Anyway, okay. So I guess when you look back, I mean, this is, you know, this season where they have championship expectations, obviously didn't work out. Where
some would say
a failure?
This season
maybe
might have been a failure.
Might have been a failure. Where do you go from here? I mean, I think that they clearly have some roster decisions to make. Chris Middleton is a guy that is just a giant exclamation point on the roster sheet to me. He looked really, really bad in the series, especially on the defensive end.
I think there's a bigger overarching question, and it's one that nobody anywhere, I think, is really ready to ask. Is Giannis is 28. He's starting to get a couple of little injuries. His game is not necessarily because of the lack of shooting. Might not age particularly well. There's no question, he's still an all-star level player, an all-NBA level player. The difference between a top 5 and a top 15 player. I'm not saying that, but that's something we have to be on the lookout for over the next year, I think.
I'm not
there with you at all.
I'm not even back.
Yeah, I'm going to push back too.
That's too extreme.
I would
think.
just say the back issue. I'm much more worried about the fall and that contributing to how he played than anything else. So, and he did struggle with some injuries this year.
But if you also look like his free throws shooting decline this year, his ability to kind of make floater range shots, his ability to make jump shots, all were maybe this year's an aberration, but it's not like for large guys, when some of the athleticism starts to go, it can be quick. That's all I'm saying. I am not saying that's what's happening.
Yeah, Bucks Twitter, go at him. No,
Yeah, no.
just kidding.
Oh
just
my
kidding.
God.
Just kidding. Don't.
Well, no,
don't-
but I
don't.
mean, when it gets down to it, like if you want to root, like number one thing, he wasn't good enough in this series. Jimmy Butler outplayed him in the series.
Jimmy Butler,
and
yeah.
for the Bucks to win series, Giannis has to be the best player on the floor.
I think the one thing I think Seth, part of the stuff of like his free throw shooting decline, the floaters and all that stuff, I almost look at it the other way. What if those years that he was good was the aberration and he just had a good run there? I mean, we don't know. Like it's one or the other. There's going to be flukish stuff in that instance there and all of those things. And I know Bucks fans are screaming, Giannis was hurt, all that stuff we were talking about. And
that's probably right.
But like I think that part's too premature. But I think what you're looking for with the future for the Bucks in terms of like, man, we've been screaming this for a long time. Man, you need to get more athletic on the wings. And when you see the big acquisitions they made in the offseason, and I like the Joe Ingles pickup for them. Thought there'd be more behind that. I like the Ingles pickup, but I thought they'd do more. Then the 5 second-round picks for Jay Crowder, who's really a power forward and not a wing player and not overly athletic. I think those are like, you're looking at that going like, guys, like you need more athletic. And I think the ultimate thing is, that's a massive misstep by the front office. I mean, Dante DiVincenzo for Serge Ibaka, and whatever we could say about Dante and his knees and he shot poorly, all that stuff, this and that. Yeah. But he's a little bit more athletic. Like he's giving the Warriors some juice here. And there's a lot of things that go into that, but I think there's things like that. Like when you're looking at that as an organization, like that's not helping them.
Well, Grayson Allen as your starting two guard doesn't help you.
I mean, like you have to upgrade over that. Like that's just something you need to be before you're sitting there going like, we need Crowder. You need to go find the upgrade for that.
Watching Atlanta and Bogdanovic coming off the bench for them, I can't help but think about him on this team. Him with the Milwaukee Bucks, like he's kind of the guy that they were missing. Another guy who could stir the drink, who could get shots up, defends well enough. He's a little bit bigger than Grayson Allen. I mean, it just, it's not a Band-Aid. It's more a better fix than that. But it's not everything. I think that one big issue is it could be Brook Lopez defensively when it comes playoff time. Miami feasted against the drop.
Okay.
Listen,
no,
I'm just saying.
No,
now listen.
No, I'm going to push. Like, if you, I'm
please push back. No, that's the point.
This is something that, and we did this in the finals last year too. So this is a broad thing. Is for whatever reason, like if a team makes some shots against the other team, the defense, blah blah. The Bucks lost the series offensively. They had an 88 offensive rating in the fourth quarter.
Series.
Just like
Brook was great offensively,
and just like in the finals last year. The games that the Warriors won, they had the same offense in the games they lost. The games that the Celtics lost, their offense went in the tank. They lost the series on offense. Like the Heat's offense was fine, despite Jimmy going crazy and everyone else shooting like 93% from three. So this was not a series. Maybe some of the defensive rebounding, maybe some of the hustle plays Mo was talking about. But in general, it was the not able to consistently generate and make good shots on offense, which was lack of ball handling, lack of athleticism, lack of shooting. So it's not like Brook Lopez was the bright spot for the Bucks this series. The starting there is the wrong spot. Thank you. I yield the rest of my time.
It is though a sign of the lack of athleticism.
Yeah. I'm gonna just kind of say one thing about the defense though, because I think Seth is largely right about the offense. I think this goes back to what we scream about all the time. is just versatility, right? Like they played one defense all year, drop coverage. They played and in the playoffs they only played one defense, and everybody's screaming, "Why didn't you double? Why didn't you do that?" They don't have the personnel to double. That's the most important. Like that's the thing when people go off on like where were the adjustments?
Where are the
things like
coaching
that.
adjustments?
Yeah, and it's like and the coaching adjustments. It's a failure of coaching.
Sure,
Because that's something he should have been doing in the regular season. We scream, I say it all the time. Got to experiment. Offensive versatility, defensive versatility.
Well, we hammered this Bucks team and this Bucks coaching staff for years. We hammered them on lack of versatility, playing one way, and ultimately, Mo, right back where they were.
Yeah, and I think that's an important thing with all those, just going through the playoffs. Just watch that throughout the entire playoffs of what teams can play different ways, offense and defensively, and see how far they go in that stuff. Now, sometimes you can be so damn good in your one way that you can get away with it, right? And I think that's part of it. But I also just think when we're talking about the Bucks defense, we have to look at the personnel. You're not doubling with Brook Lopez. Like that doesn't help you in that sense, putting him up in the screen and then Jimmy cooks him up top. Like that's not going to happen on a switch. You're not going to do that and things like that. So I think there's those things. I just think the failure of not changing stuff up on the defense is in the regular season is kind of what hurt them. And the thing about this series loss, it highlighted all the problems that were underneath the surface of this team. Whether if it wasn't the Heat, it was going to be somebody else that was going to expose them. It really, all of these were just under the surface level that I think a lot of us chose not to see or just missed the signs to begin with.
Well, how much of this, guys, and I'm spitballing going off script, but how much of this is the difference between the playoffs and the regular season? I mean, we've always said it's essentially a different sport. Jimmy Butler is like a top 5 player once the
Michael Jordan.
Yeah, he really I do not know how to, as an analyst, I do not know how to approach Jimmy Butler anymore, aside from to say he is trolling us for the regular season because, he's like out there doing cardio. I mean, he goes and gets the photo with the ridiculous hairdo at the start of the year so that when he comes out and he kicks everyone's ass in April and May, we have to show that photo all the time. I mean, I really it's not even frustrating. It's enjoyable that Jimmy Butler is so amazing once it comes playoff time. But I mean, isn't part of this the difference between churning regular season wins and being able to turn it up for the playoffs? 16 game teams versus 82 game teams.
This is an interesting dichotomy because on one hand, in the NBA playoffs, best player wins is still a pretty good starting point. But I think if you want to talk about the difference between regular season and postseason, and the Knicks Cavs series, I think is a good example of this. Regular season is much more about like strongest link. Playoffs, that weakest link becomes much more a problem, and the Cavs not having a fifth guy. I mean, we
Isaac Okoro played 3 minutes in one of those games, and then he was closing the last. I mean, it was just they didn't have anybody.
By the way, if we're going to talk about coaching, the fact that somehow this is an organizational win, but also a coaching win. That if you look who Miami closed that game with, it was Jimmy Butler and 4 undrafted guys. None of whom were Duncan Robinson, so they're getting like real minutes from 5 undrafted guys. And those guys aren't looking out of place. So that's, stick that aside. But the fact that, you find these little things. Okay, Grayson Hallam, perfectly functional, makes some shots, do fine in the regular season. There's a problem in the playoffs. Like you have your small forward by committee in Cleveland, and you play your 2 bigs and your 2 smalls, and that works, and blah, blah, blah. And then like you play a game, and then it's like, you know what? Donovan Mitchell is just kind of hanging out on the weak side, but he can guard Julius Randle. Let me put Obi Toppin in. And he's going to run circles around Donovan Mitchell while he's not looking. And you don't have that card to play, but the Knicks do.
And I think it's such a great point, Seth, what Seth makes, because in the playoffs, coaches get to plan against your weakest link.
Right.
In the regular season, you don't have the time. Let's run our stuff. Let's nail our philosophy down. Let's figure out how we're going to play, what works for us, what doesn't work for us, rotations and things like that. The regular season is the laboratory experiment to get everything for the playoffs, for the top teams. right? And I think that's the stuff there. And I think that's the difference. And and Seth's strongest link in the regular season and weakest link in the playoffs are the most important thing. And I think we kind of just say it all the time, right? Just don't play the guys who suck, right? And that's kind of the situation. And some teams don't have that option,
right?
You know, I'm gonna veer a little bit off course, and then let's get back to the Bucks. I think there's one more point we want to hit, but all the criticism Bickerstaff is getting about why didn't you play small? Why didn't you play small? Look who he had to put out there when he played small. Whoever your big is, Mobley or Allen, and then you have Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell, right? So that's 3 guys, and then your other options are Lamar Stevens, Isaac Okoro, Chetty Osman, Karis LeVert. Those aren't good options. Those are terrible options. As a coach, when you're looking down the bench, you're like, we should go small. And you look down there.
Danny Green was sitting there the whole time, Mo.
Dean Wade erasure.
Yes, Dean Wade deserves to be erased. And Danny Green, too. But like when you're throwing Danny Green out there at the same time, you're still when you're as a coach, so when you're looking down the bench going, we should go small, and you look at that lineup, we should stay big.
Right.
Like that's a scary, like I know we're getting killed now. That's gonna get us killed later. And I think that's one of those things there with the most important part there.
The more I do this, the more I learn that teams that are trying to patch holes during the regular season often don't patch them, at all. And like when you look at the Bucks, you look at the Cavs, and the search for that 4th or 5th guy. I mean, Jay Crowder, they make a trade for Jay Crowder, and he basically can't play in this series. The Cavs never figured out who was going to be their 3-and-D guy. And when you're still searching for those problems and you're getting to the first round of the playoffs, even as a favored team, you need to have the answers about your team before you get to that point.
And the part of that is making sure I sort of give the Cavs a little bit of a pass on this because they knew it was a problem all year. They just didn't necessarily have the mechanisms. Like they tried the stuff they tried. They just didn't have the levers to pull because they used all their levers to get Donovan Mitchell. I think Mo talked about it earlier. Like these aren't new problems for the Bucks, and they sort of doubled down on the things that were already sort of strengths, but also sort of playoff worrisome things, and did not address the athleticism, the wing size, the lack of ball handling after their top couple guys.
Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Chime. Visit chime.com/NBA show for more information. Do your financial goals feel out of reach? Well, they don't have to. With Chime's secured credit builder Visa credit card, you can start building credit with your own money through on-time payments and small everyday purchases like groceries, streaming, and even gas. Members see an increase of 30 points to their credit scores on average. Chime reports your payments to the major credit bureaus, and it helps you build your credit over time. It's super easy, and all with no annual fees, large security deposits, or credit checks to apply. Start making your financial dreams a reality with Chime. Signing up only takes 2 minutes and doesn't affect your credit score. Get started at chime.com/NBA show. That's chime.com/NBA show. The Chime Credit Builder Visa credit card is issued by Stride Bank N.A. pursuant to a license from Visa USA Chime checking account, and $200 qualifying direct deposit required to apply for the secured Chime Credit Builder Visa credit card. Regular on-time payment history can have a positive impact on your credit score. Impact to score may vary, and some users' scores may not improve. Out-of-network ATM withdrawal fees may apply except at MoneyPass ATMs, in a 7-Eleven, or any Allpoint or Visa Plus Alliance ATM.
I do want to talk a little bit of the Giannis failure conversation here a little bit. Like, it's funny in the sense of like philosophically, everything he said was correct, and it's nice, and he's looking at it with a healthy perspective in all of those things. It's very weird when probably one of the best players in the NBA sounds like my dad. And I don't mean accent. I literally mean you win some, you lose some. Like that was essentially his attitude with that stuff. And the concept of, and I'm sure this is going to be an unpopular opinion from a lot of people, but the idea of this, whether this season was a failure or not for the Bucks, it definitely was a failure. I don't think there's a way you could look at it. And I understand Giannis's perspective of that stuff, and it's healthy, but like when you look at it in the grand scheme of things, that's an answer for the Cavs. That's an answer for the Kings, whether they move on or not, or whatnot. It's not an answer for a team that won a championship, knows how to get to the championship, and is expected to at least get to the conference finals. That's not an answer. That should be applauded in that sense. And I know people are going to get upset with that, but like I just think the attitude of that, and I don't think Giannis has a attitude issue. We know he's competitive as all hell because he plays the regular season like crazy.
Right.
But I think the concept of this season wasn't a failure is actually a mistake for the Bucks. And if that's the approach the other guys are going to take with it, I think that's a bit of a red flag, I would say, in those regards. Because I just think when you look at it, like it's just not the answer you need in that instance when you're a championship level team. And that's that team. He even said, like, we work towards a goal. The goal was to win a championship for them. The goal for other teams sometimes is to make the playoffs and the play-in and whatnot. The season's a success for the Knicks because they got to the second round. I don't care what happens in the second round. They got to the second round. It's something they haven't done since 2013. That's a success for them. They've pushed past their previous experience and have lifted up. So I think that's kind of the important aspect of it. And it's sort of expectations, moving goalposts and things like that throughout the season. But I don't think there's a way to look at the season and not say it was a failure for the Bucks. And I felt like even though Giannis got applauded a ton for those comments, I didn't necessarily agree with those comments coming from him. Bad messenger for the wrong team. Like, I think that's kind of where I stood on that. I'd love to hear what you guys think.
It's a context free. It is a great answer to some question at some time.
Yeah.
In the context of the moment, it is much more of a coping mechanism than a genuine answer to that question. And and he's entitled to that. He's entitled to feel any sort of way. You can see he's frustrated, he's mad, as he should be. And but it's the as you say, as a championship level team, either at or coming to the end of their run, it's not about the friends we made along the way at this point for them. And so I don't think that it's going to be. I do not think that either the individual or organizational response is substantively going to be, well, you win some, you lose some.
Right.
But in terms of that being a good life lesson, bad substantive answer to honestly, what do you think about this season?
If Greg Popovich had been the guy sitting there saying that, would you guys feel differently about it? I mean, and granted, I don't mean Greg Popovich coaching the team he's coaching now, but I do think that it echoes some of the sentiments that we've heard from Greg Popovich. I mean, you lose a game, what does he want to do? Let's go drink a bottle of wine, right? Like you move on, right? And I know you, Mo, you in particular work with Pop, so you can tell me, like, I like you get where I'm coming from here, right? Like having some perspective in life. Giannis's story, like we all know where this guy came from, right? Like losing a basketball game is nowhere near a bad thing happening to you as a human being, especially when you come from where he came from. So I don't know. What I mean is putting a positive spin on things is something that I do to myself all the time. I mean, I'm not going to fault him for looking at it as, look, this is another step in my life and I'm trying to build on it. I think he was just giving an honest reaction to the question in the moment. And maybe we should just reevaluate when people sound like psychopaths after they lose a game. And we should say, well, that's a little bit performative.
Well, I'm going to push back on a lot of what you said.
Please do. No, please do. I'm asking you about the Pop thing.
I got you. I just want you to understand also, I have the unique experience of being on a team that was upset as the 1 seed. And I'll just give you the honest, I'll give you the we lost in 6 games. I was with the Spurs. We lost to Memphis in 6 games. A whole lot of stuff and kind of a lot of similar stuff. Manu had an injury towards the end of the season. He missed game 1, things like that. Grizzlies stole game 1, basically took control of the series from there on out. Bad matchup for us, all that fun stuff. And they came in for our throats, and that was really appropriate. And to a degree, you're right. Pop's response to it was, okay, that means we just get to, everybody has to help me move into my new wine cellar. Not kidding, by the way. Not kidding. That was his response on the plane. But I'm just going to tell you this much. I promise you, Pop looks at that as a failed opportunity and a missed opportunity to win a championship. I promise you that at that time. Like, there's no question about it.
Sure.
It was him moving wine that day or him going to, everybody go to dinner and let's, kind of talk and things like that. I've been at those dinners. You are basically reliving the experience all over again. The famous dinner that they had in Miami after they lost Game 6 and blew Game 6, was they were all coping. It's coping. It's Pop's coping mechanism in that sense. I don't think Pop definitely will have looked at that season as a missed opportunity and a failure at that point. He learned a lot of great stuff, and then the next year they went and balled out, right? And all of those things. And yes, there are things the Bucks can learn from this season to carry them into next season, and maybe next year they win the championship and they can look back going like, hey man, our failure last year led to that. I think it's us being afraid to fail. I think that's a bigger issue, more importantly than that. The word failure is such a negative connotation to people. It's oh God, I'm gonna sound like
people
Yoda.
take it personally.
But it's like a learning opportunity in that sense,
right?
With all of those things, that's kind of what Giannis was saying. But I think to not acknowledge that this season was a failure is almost missing the lesson. And I think maybe that's something he's doing privately and doesn't want to do publicly and that stuff. And maybe that's something with this stuff. Dave, I think if he came out and just was like, yeah, no, I think this season was a failure, or answered it a little bit differently,
right?
I don't think it's still a psychopathic answer. I don't think that would make him a thing like that. I just think it's more just realistic as to looking at, yeah, man, this sucks.
Right.
We lost. It sucks.
And you can hear that in his voice, the whole answer.
Yeah.
Right.
The whole,
that's the thing, is that it was very obvious to me that he was feeling like he felt the loss. And I thought, Giannis is a team player. Like, if you come across and you say, yeah, it was a complete failure in a series where they got eliminated, where he missed a couple of games because he was hurt, almost 3 whole games. Well, now you get into a scenario where he's kind of throwing his team under the bus, and he's not that guy. So, I didn't mind the answer as much as some people. I know you guys didn't hate the answer. I actually thought the question itself was good. That was it set him up to at least express his feelings on the season. So
I love Eric Name. I would have not used the word failure because that's a trigger word. I would have asked just his perspective on the season in that sense. But it goes
back to your point, what you were just saying. Failure is a part of every single process. Like, that's how you get better. Like, you don't, like, Steph Curry's missed more shots than he's made. And so that word shouldn't be so loaded, maybe. And
I want to flip it to you, Dave. What would have been your response if Trae Young said that yesterday?
You're right, man. This is my inherent bias, my pro Giannis inherent bias. Because I know
it's all of us. We all have it.
Right.
We all have it. So it's like, like you wanted to flip it on the Pop, but let's flip it the other way.
Flip it the other way. Man.
It's that stuff. And there's all of those things. So I think that's a thing. And again, because I know people are going to get upset with this, I just want to say it again. I don't think so. The actual points, like, that's actually great. Yeah. Like, in that sense, for teams, it's a healthy thing, and it's a healthy response from him. And I love Giannis for that, and I'm happy he can have that kind of a healthy view of it. But I don't necessarily think I think it's just us being so afraid of the word failure. Like, you got to embrace that shit, because that's how you learn. The amount of things I fucked up in my life and failed on, and then how I learned from that is an important thing. And I think that's just one of those things from that. I just think it's our fear of failure and that word being such a trigger word, and then everybody's response to, oh my God, it's so great. I think that was my thing.
Just the final point on this. There's almost a bigger lesson here where the Bucks have failed. The Bucks are not a failure.
Yeah.
And I think that's something so-and-so played poorly. He is not a bad player. So, like, it's something we get so immediate and generalized. I mean, the response to sporting events is very fundamental attribution error, in that guy did that, therefore he is that, instead of that being among the things that he has done, among the things that he's experienced. And I think that's where that instinct to want to fundamentalize that one experience is, I think, where that fear of failure comes from. And that's both unhealthy and really blinds us from a how do we get better? How do we move on? What was actually wrong? We have to figure out what the problem was before we can fix it. If it's a failure, we suck. That's not helpful. What do we do well? What do we do poorly? What do we need to get better on?
Yeah, but to be fair, like, do you guys remember off the top of your head who lost the Super Bowl this year?
Eagles.
There, look faster than I did because I was trying to remember before setting you guys up. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at First Leaf. Head over to tryfirstleaf.com/NBA show and save 50% on your first 6 bottles. I love this time of year when the weather's getting warmer and I get to see my friends and family more often. Whether we're going to meet up for a birthday party or a barbecue or we're just hanging out, I always want to have some great wine that I can share, and that's why I love First Leaf. As America's most personalized wine company, First Leaf just has completely taken the guesswork out of my wine selection. I just go online, answer a few quick questions about what I like, what I don't like that week, and their experts curate a selection of award-winning wines tailored to my taste. You get to choose how often you receive your wine, and every single selection is backed by First Leaf's 100% satisfaction guarantee. First Leaf's monthly wine club has made my wine shopping experience much easier than it used to be. I no longer have to wander around a giant wine store guessing at what I'm going to like based on the bottle. And I love sharing great wine with my family and friends, and I know you will too. So give First Leaf a try and head over to tryfirstleaf.com/NBA show to sign up and save 50% on your first 6 bottles plus free shipping. That's tryfirstleaf.com, tryfirstleaf.com/NBA show to save 50% on your first 6 bottles plus free shipping. Tryfirstleaf.com/NBA show. Okay, let's move on from the Bucks, who are done, and let's move on to the second round in the West. We have one matchup already set, and man, the Nuggets and the Suns, they might score 140 points a game, each team. This is going to be absolutely incredible. We're recording this Friday morning. They play their game 1 Saturday. The schedule is all over the place because Warriors and Lakers, Warriors, Kings, Lakers, Grizzlies is Friday night. So, man, the schedule is really weird. But Nuggets, Suns, 1 seed, 4 seed. The matchup we've kind of been waiting for. It's going to put the best team in the West against the team that we all felt like had the best shot at coming out of the West because of Kevin Durant. I don't know that I want to call him the favorites, but
That's waving that finger so hard.
he really is. It's so
I
distracting.
just, no, this just means that there's no way of avoiding it. Either Kevin Durant or Nikola Jokic is a failure, and we just have to accept that.
That's it. Well, guys, all right. So the first question I'm going to ask you: who's the best player in the series? Straight up, who's the best player in the series?
The fuck if I know, Dave.
It's incredible.
I think there are genuinely 4 options.
Devin Booker, like, I mean, because I only mentioned Jokic and Durant there in the little open. Devin Booker was the best player, maybe in the whole first round. It's him or Jimmy Butler in the first round of the playoffs.
It's Jimmy.
But he was the best player in the West, I think. Like, Devin Booker was incredible, and if that carries over, and he's the best player in this series, like. Kevin Durant's the second best player on his own team. How do the Nuggets even win?
I mean, but I also think don't sleep on Jamal Murray being one of the best players in this, being the best player in this series. Like, he has that ability with all of that. It actually, the amazing thing is, I think it's just going to come down to the role players. Like, this is going to come down to, it's what Seth was saying earlier, weakest link. And the honest truth is, and I like the Suns a lot. The more I kind of think about it, they have the most weakest links. The thing is, they might have the 2 best players in this series. They might end up being the 2 best players in KD or Booker, and it could be either order there. Jokic is going to have a say, no question about it. But like they have the most weak links. I mean, we look at the Cavs and crush them, going like, who's their 5th guy? Torrey Craig's been great the first 4 games of the series for the Suns, but does anybody trust that that's going to continue to last? Josh Okogie, we're talking about Terrence Ross, like, Landry Shamet, who I went completely ballistic that was playing at the end of crunch time. Like, ask Seth, I completely lost my mind on, like, I was yelling at the mic. It was one of those things, but like, those are concerning situations there for the Suns. And that doesn't even go to what's CP going to look like. What Ayton are you going to get? Like, I have some real concerns with them, but they might have the 2 best players in this series.
We talked earlier about, if you only have one way to play and you might just have to be good enough to make it work. Like that's the Suns this year. The Suns can't go small because they don't have the dudes to do it. They don't really have a lot of they just frankly outside of their four dudes and whoever else is the fifth and steal minutes and maybe get some good contributions from Bismack Biyombo or whoever. Um, they don't have a plan B, but plan A is pretty damn good. Maybe plan A is KD, go ahead. Plan B is Devin, go ahead. Those are two pretty good plans.
Maybe the other way around.
But yeah, A and B. Yeah,
but it's right. That's
yeah.
Okay.
Whereas the Nuggets have Nuggets have some things they can do in this series. Like I was like wondering, like, would I think about, would I put Jokic on the fifth guy and sort of, can Porter Jr. hold up against eight? And how do the matchups look then? You can at least try it. That's interesting.
Can Porter Jr. hold up against Kevin Durant? And maybe Gordon is trying to hold up against Ayton.
Yeah.
That's the issue, right? Because
I think Brown and KCP are better matchups on Durant.
100%. But if you're gonna put MPJ on Ayton, they're gonna involve Ayton in a lot of actions, and I think that's gonna be a problem.
Disagree.
If you don't think so,
if you're gonna try to hide Jokic, they're going to bring Jokic into the action. That's going to be the deal right there. They're going to bring Jokic into the action there. And I think that's really the situation. And I think more likely they're better off hiding Jamal Murray on the fifth guy. Because the last thing you want is Murray and Jokic both having to defend the screens. It's disclaimer. It's in the contracts that all of us sign. We have to say, yes, Jokic has improved as a defensive player and all that stuff like that. I still have a lot of questions of what he's going to do in the pick and roll. Mm-hmm. Are they going to be in drop? You're in drop. It's instant death against the Suns team in that KD and Booker getting to the mid range is going to be a problem. But I think are they going to be up higher? There's going to be there's a million questions. I cannot wait for game one to see where everybody starts, because I don't think that's how the series, where these guys start defensively, both teams, is how they end defensively in that stuff. Like this is adjustment series time. This is time for Monty Williams and Michael Malone to earn their money.
And Jokic, they like to have him come up and play high on those pick and rolls and send two to the ball. You can't do that against the Suns. You just can't. They have too much shot making.
I mean, if that's what they're going to do, cool. Put KD in the pick and roll. Have him as the screener. Because then when the ball goes to him and it's a 4-on-3 and it's Kevin freaking Durant, good luck. There's challenges there. And then again, that's where you force it to the fifth guy. Can Torrey Craig hit shots? That's where those guys are going to be massive in that, because you're just going to basically not guard them.
So what we're saying is that this series is going to be about the 8th or 9th best player, not the top 8. It's going to be like Torrey Craig goes 5 for 8 in 3 games.
I think that those guys are going to determine almost which way the hill is sloping, and then from there, like I don't think Torrey Craig and Bruce Brown are going to determine the series. I think it's going to determine that matchup is going to determine how big a lift Jokic or KD or Booker have to do to get their team over the top. So it's going to frame the series, not necessarily decide the series.
All right, I want to swing back to something that Mo was talking about. The Suns could have the 2 best players in the series, right? Booker and Durant. How many more players do you go through? Couple, 3, and then you get to Ayton, CP. Do you worry about the Suns' depth at all? I mean, they had Kevin Durant and Devin Booker playing like 45 minutes a night. I mean, and that series, it was over in 5, but the Clippers didn't have, their high-end talent. I don't know if these guys can play 45 minutes a game for a 6 or 7 game series against the Nuggets.
So I went and looked this up, and in actually the last 10 years, teams have had a couple big minute guys in the first round, and it doesn't seem like it's prevented them from going deep in the playoffs just on that. So I think that is a question mark, but I don't think it's as quite as these guys can't give you 45. I mean, these are 2 pretty monstrously well conditioned guys at this point with whatever Devin Booker does from a preparation standpoint. And Kevin Durant has always been a guy you could just like until you drop KD.
I think it's not the depth that's the issue. It's that look at who they have to play as their seventh guy when they have to sub those guys out. And I think that's the important thing there. And I think in this series, I'm not worried about the minutes. I was worried about the minutes in the first round more because of the first round. In the sense of like, can they keep doing it in that sense? And they have to use it, burn it so early in the first round. In the second round, Jokic is going to be playing 40 something minutes this series, and like that's going to be really important in that sense. I mean, they don't have a backup big, and I think that's stuff that you're looking at. And I think that's the issue for them in that self. So he's going to be playing heavy minutes. Murray's going to be playing heavy minutes. Like, as we go deeper, those guys will all be playing heavy minutes. So I'm not as concerned about that on this. I'm more concerned about like when they have to stagger those guys, when they have to stagger the KD and Booker stuff. And I think Monty Williams would be smart to always have two of his top four in there, and KD and Booker should split time and CP and Ayton should split time in that staggering kind of situation. I'm just worried about the other options that they have. I'm not worried that they're only going to play 7 or 8 guys. I just worry that the 8th and 7th guy is Landry Shamet.
Well, and the 6th and 5th are Josh Okogie and Torrey Craig.
Right. Like, like those are my, Bismack Biyombo. Like, it's those are, and these guys have been good for them. Like Bismack Biyombo's been good for them, but still those are the things. And foul trouble is going to be the biggest issue. Is going to be the thing to watch for, especially for the Suns more than the Nuggets, because I think the Nuggets have more cards in their sleeves offensively and the way they can attack. If Porter has a big series and things like that.
And the fascinating thing is the person you'd most worry about foul trouble for the Nuggets, obviously Jokic. The guy he's matched up straight across against is a guy who never draws fouls.
Yeah,
right.
So that's like the subtle thing, like the thing that we want to see from DeAndre Ayton. Like we talked earlier about the Bucks, about all these little things. Like DeAndre Ayton's like. This is a series where the lack of force that DeAndre Ayton plays with, whether the Nuggets get away with putting a Porter Jr. or someone else on him, or the fact that he's not able to keep, or he might not be able to keep Jokic off the offensive boards, or he's simply not going to be able to really pressure Jokic with foul trouble defensively. Like those things could all be pretty big detriments to the Suns in this series. They're like minor things about what is an overall pretty good player.
All right. We talked a little bit about how we think the Nuggets might try to guard the Suns. How do you guys see the Suns trying to guard the Nuggets? I mean, I don't know. Like you mentioned before, Ayton can't get Jokic in foul trouble. And I don't think Ayton can guard Jokic. I mean, nobody can, realistically. Do you expect double teams every time Jokic touches the ball anytime inside, the free throw line? I mean, what are you thinking, Mo?
I'm more of the attitude of I'm going to let Jokic get 40 and make sure nobody else scores. Like, yeah, let Jokic eat up Ayton and Biyombo. But when they're most dangerous is when Jokic is dropping 12 times and things like that. Like, I'm more of the thought process of the attitude of like, hey, let's lock down Jamal Murray. Let's make sure Michael Porter Jr. is not going off on us, because now we're spreading out too much defensively, and now we have too many fire alarms to go off at the same time and things like that. Jokic is gonna get his points. I think we kind of are all confident in that. Let's make sure he doesn't get his assists. Let's make sure we kind of try to limit it in that sense. And I think when you look at the way Booker played defensively, I think KD's really good defensively. Like, there are some things there. And I know that the Nuggets are going to attack Chris Paul a ton, and they should. I think that's the real question mark for the Suns, is how do they hide Chris Paul? But I think when it comes to the Jokic question, I think the answer, and this might be the answer for me, for every team that faces him, take the assist away. Let's see what happens. Can he maintain an entire series also scoring a whole crap ton but not averaging a ton of assists? Like, that would be one of my first views of it.
I have one more sort of defensive worry from the Suns side, and that is something the Nuggets have gotten a lot of mileage out of over the last bit, is like Aaron Gordon early rim runs. I think that this is, you mentioned KD has been a pretty good playoff defender. It just the bulk of that that Gordon has, whether it's against KD, whether it's against Booker, who's obviously very strong, but Aaron Gordon is much bigger, and like his ability at his size and sort of agility to run the floor, because Jokic is going to get the rebound, take it off the rim and go, and Gordon is going to run straight down the middle of the floor. If that starts collapsing Phoenix's defense, that's where some of the assists you're talking about come in semi-transition, whether it's to Gordon himself, or if a guy pulls it off the corner, he can hit him. He can hit KCP. He can drop a off to Murray on a trail for like a pick and roll or a DHO. So that is something that I'm going to be very interested to see how well Phoenix deals with.
The Nuggets are sneaky athletic. They really are sneaky athletic. They've got Gordon. They've got, KCP is a good athlete. They've got Bruce Brown. They've got Zeke Naji. They have guys, Christian Brown. They've got guys that they can throw out there that can run in transition and get moving. But yeah, I did that on purpose. So do you guys want to make a prediction on this series? I hate predictions, but like, this is not like
we're cowards.
I hate predictions. I don't think they're very fun. I don't think they're all that interesting. But I like to give you guys the opportunity. I think we're going to have a 6 or 7 game series, very obviously. If it goes 7, I think the Nuggets win it. I trust Jokic in when it comes down to crunch time, and there's no more crunch time than a game 7. I just don't know that I trust any player in the league making decisions like I do Nikola Jokic. You guys kind of agree with me?
I counter with Kevin Durant.
You're gonna get so many. You're gonna get so many nasty emails from the Light Years crew about that, Dave.
Oh, well, listen, man. You guys all know.
No, but like
better.
Warriors went down 2-0, and I never wavered. Let's just put it that way.
I do just want to reiterate the point. This is a huge coaching series.
Oh yeah,
huge coaching series. I think we can't, Michael Malone and Monty Williams, and I think there's things to like about both of them. There's things to not like about both of them. But this is a huge coaching series in terms of adjustments and watching every bit of it. And I think that's where I'm going to be most excited for in this series. If I'm forced to pick it, I'm just going to say the Suns win the series. I don't know how many games, just because I'm going with the top line of talent, but like, I don't feel comfortable. Like, I think that's kind of the end of it. I don't feel great. The tear Booker's on and what he's been doing defensively is freaking eye opening.
Yeah. I just tend to lean the Nuggets did it all year. And they're playing. I know that's it. I just the Bucks are killing. They're killing my process here. They're killing my process. The Nuggets did it all year. I trust their chemistry. I trust their depth. I trust Nikola Jokic, but it's Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. I don't know. I think that's a good place to wrap up. You guys got anything else before we go?
No, just join Seth and I on playback for the Nerder streams.
There you go.
I did a dumb thing last weekend, and I sort of started to complain that the first round had been boring so far, and since then we've just had banger after banger. So let's keep that up.
Yeah. This has been the best playoff since I've started doing this as a job. I really am enjoying myself right now. The basketball has been awesome. The pods have been so much fun. Thank you guys for joining us on the Athletic NBA show. Nerder, she wrote.